All right. So I've drawn everything down to just 2 supers. One of them, the top one's probably full. The bottom one, probably half full. Right now we got a dearth going on. They are bringing in a little bit of protein. There really isn't any nectar that I see coming in. The last thing they had was soybean, and that's done. So I'm just trying to get them some food. So when you have a single brood box, it's a little tricky. Now this box is real light, completely packed full of bees. So I can take the queen excluders off now. I don't think the queen is going to get up through the bee escape. I want to just check one of these middle frames. I just want to verify that I have some eggs and I have a queen. I'm not going to go through them and try to find the queen. I just want to see if I can see some eggs. Sometimes I get lucky, see the queen. I think I'll look at one more. Not seeing a good egg frame there. I think I see larvae. Yeah, I see eggs in here. So I see eggs. I know I've got a queen in there somewhere. I've got cat brood. This is a new queen in this one, relatively new for the summer. The old queen, I couldn't figure out why they kept trying to supersede. They kept building all these queen cells, and the queen was doing a great job laying. It didn't make any sense. And then I was looking at her one day, and I realized that she was missing one of her legs, and that was what it was. They didn't like that. So although they didn't kill her, they tried to replace her. So once I saw that, I eventually just left a nice big queen cell in there for him, just one, and it ended up hatching, and they made a nice new queen. This is a Saskatraz queen in here, colony. These are Apivar strips. I've never used Apivar before. This is the first year. This location had, I did an alcohol wash for mites. It's been about 2 weeks. They were all low, one mite maybe 2. Some of them were 0. But I'm going to go ahead and treat with it this year. And I just did oxalic acid last year, and I really found it difficult because I had mite counts of 5 or 10. And what I noticed, the oxalic acid would cut the mite numbers in half. So if you have 10, it would cut them to 5. But then they just hovered at 5 until pretty late in the year. Yeah, those girls are already snacking on that patty. They're like, oh. So I've been putting this little extra shim on here just to give them a little more space while I'm pushing them down. And then the bee escape. Pretty confident the queen's not going to find her way up the bee escape, so I can take the queen excluder off. Ah, this one's pretty full right here. That's nice. I'll get some honey out of that. Because right now these bottom boxes are virtually empty. There's nothing in them but pollen and bees, and just enough bee bread to keep going the larvae that they have. So they really need to be fed right now to keep them going so they don't start cannibalizing larvae. But this one's doing really well. I have another location that has a feral colony that's living in a tree, and it's been in that hollow tree for probably 7 or 8 years. And I think that, to me, that yard, at least this year especially, always has higher mite counts. And the other thing is it always seems to have more hive beetles. I had to put some beetle blaster traps in some of those colonies. Now this yard, I don't really see any beetles or anything in the lids or running around or anything. So, which I wouldn't expect because these are completely in the open. And normally when the colonies are in the open sun all the time, and if they're big colonies like these, you just don't have a lot of beetle pressure. They can keep it at bay. My goodness. This thing has... This colony, towards the end of the summer, I came out to add a super, and I noticed there wasn't much population in the supers, which usually they're bursting. And I went through it, and no eggs, no larvae, just cap cells. And it was weird. The bees were real calm. They weren't aggressive. They weren't all running around. Sometimes when they don't have a queen, they kind of, you can just tell they look like they're not organized. They're just kind of running around, and they're frantic, and they're kind of more aggressive, and none of that. They look like they had a queen, but they did not have a queen. So I took one out of one of my nucleus colonies and pretty much direct released her. I put her on top of the brood area, and left her for about 3 hours, and came back and then just let her out, and came back a couple days later to check, and she was laying eggs and doing great. You can kind of get away with that when you have a laying queen. You can direct introduce like that. Now, if she had been, you know, in a queen cage or something for a while and she hadn't been laying eggs, it would have, you know, it might not have gone so well. But I haven't checked them in a couple weeks, so I'm hoping. There's a lot of bees in here, so I'm pretty confident she's got some eggs in here, I'll find. We'll see. And I keep pulling out sheets of brood. Yep, there's eggs. She's already filled that hatch. Is she over here? All right. So this yard has 5 colonies on it. They're all 100 feet apart. If you notice, I don't have any bees crowded together. They're all 100 feet apart. All of these colonies, even the 2 that replaced their queens, 3 of these 5 have new queens. They all made close to 300 pounds of honey each. I mean, they really made a lot of honey. This is a very, very good location. These are all really good bees. And I can't say enough about doing the single brood box. It certainly requires that you got to have a second box on in the spring. You've got to manage the brood. You know, here I was out March 1 in the wind and the rain. I was going through boxes. I was working bees when people were telling me it's too windy, it's too wet, and when you've got a single brood box, you got to double them up and you got to start taking splits so you're going to have swarms. I only had 1 colony swarm. So, you know, I'm getting better at managing these boxes as a single. I kind of learned this year that when they start bringing in that first pollen from the maple trees, they're all in. It doesn't matter how cold it gets, if it's snowing, they're all in. If they're not flying, they're in there working that box. They're not taking any breaks. And so, you know, I had to make splits the first week of April, and the weather was terrible, but I ended up having pretty good success. But I really didn't have a choice because I couldn't leave these boxes with 10 frames of brood in it. I mean, that's just a disaster waiting to happen. They will definitely split. Wow, you can't see with the camera, but they're already lined up all the way around that pollen patty I just put down. It's so interesting because sometimes I'll feed them in the spring pollen patties, and then it gets to a point where I can put pollen patties in a nucleus colony and they won't even touch it. I mean, it'll just dry up. They have no interest in it. And then like right now, you put a pollen patty in a colony, and I mean, they devour it. We just get such a really strong dearth here. You know, I'm surrounded by corn and soybeans, and this was a great year for soybean. They pulled in a lot of nectar off of the soybean. They were filling a medium super every 7 to 10 days. But once those are done, there's just nothing for the bees really, and you just have to feed them. And then, especially with the way I'm doing it, where I'm pushing them down into that brood box, they have to be fed from here on out. And they'll just keep backfilling that brood nest as the fall goes on, and they'll keep filling those frames up, and they'll get to where there's only a frame and a half of brood or less, and everything else will be solid honey. And by that time, it's getting really cold. They're not flying anymore, and I'll just button them up, and that's it till spring. Till March 1, I'll check on them and see how they're doing.